No, I was trying to speak, but it wasn't working. But yeah, how's it going, lads? Me and Sol were just on a call before this, Grasty, and we saw you were going live, so we thought we'd come and join you for the party.
Ah, yeah, that's good timing.
For sure. But yeah, as I was trying to say, the DYX has dropped 10.8% this year, right? It's the performance since 1973. They just passed a bill yesterday, which basically involves them printing more money. The M2 supply right now is blowing up, right? Typically, Bitcoin follows the M2 supply with some lag. It's usually a couple weeks to a couple months. But basically, for those listening, it indicates more money is circulating in the economy, including bank accounts, checking deposits, other liquid assets, and obviously that surplus of liquidity can increase capital flowing into riskier assets such as crypto. So yeah, usually it's a 3 to 6 month lag following M2 money supply, especially during liquidity shifts. In some cases, like April this year, there was a breakout above 100K and the lag was just 1 to 2 weeks behind the M2 supply. But usually this means we're going to get a larger uptrend, which is why I've seen people looking to short, and I've just said, be careful, right? If you're catching a short, make sure it's really the previous highs, like 110.3, 110.5. That was obviously your bearish order block, your previous high on the higher time frame. So a short like that would have been safe. But for me personally, the bias still remains longs over shorts. I think they're gonna like this isn't retail buying yet. This is institutions just pumping price up and people are trying to short, which is giving them liquidity to do so. And I think it's just going to be a stable increase. Now, when it comes to July 7th, I think there's going to be a big short opportunity before July 9th when Trump unpauses the tariffs. This is just how I'm playing it by book. That could change, but that's the timeline I have in terms of looking for a short higher up.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to see that even though what's that? Even though we are pumping up a bit, funding rates are still below what they should be because we consider funding rates to be neutral at 0. 0.01, and
That's a,
it's still all below
that's
that.
an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Yeah. Because usually when spot is leading perps, like really, yeah, like as you said, we have a very high funding rate. Yeah, I think we're mid-range right now. The previous range which we trade, you remember like a week ago we had that past 5 days of cancerous price action where we were trading in between 1065 to 1085. I think that was the range.
Yeah,
And then
that's
I
when it came
called a
down.
short on my live. Then I called a short on my live stream at the end. It was like 8 p.m. UTC or 9 p.m. UTC, and it was mid-range, right? We ran up to 1075 and we were getting a clear rejection, which is where I shorted. Now, that evening from 9 p.m. onwards into Asia session, then obviously we started reversing, right? And then when I woke up, Bitcoin was like 105. I got a late long. I got a late long at like 108. I caught the breakout, and I've taken profits on that long as it was up 2R. And now I'm looking for a new position, Grass. But I've been really enjoying your content, Grass. I know we spoke earlier. You've been posting some banging trades, bro. As always,
Yeah.
on point, my guy.
Well,
Me, you, and
I'm not
Sol are like
on
a duo.
point. I'm not on point anymore. I got front run on every single trade.
Oh, don't. I got front run on Solana. I got front run on my Bitcoin long at 1099 just earlier.
Look,
I got
it's
yeah.
I had this trade first of all, which
Bro,
was
it's
like
jarring.
front run to $40. Then currently, I mean, this front ran slightly, right? Because I wanted this to be wicked because there's a lot of liquidity on these wicks.
Question to avoid a front running limit order, how comes you didn't just set a price alert for that level and then look for a live reversal breaker structure? Even if you waited until the previous high and then you broke out above that at 1076, wouldn't that be a telltale sign to get in the long for confirmation? So that's how I try and avoid getting front run is like be alert when I get it price hits the area and then wait for your reaction because you may miss it by $100. You like that's just the name of the game, but it's better to catch it still than to miss it completely.
Yeah. No, I don't, I usually do that. For this one, I wasn't there because I was going to the store. I was doing things, and for so that's why I missed this long, right? So that's why I just set a limit. I was gonna call it. For this one, I just still really want these heights to be taken before I take a short. Because I still feel like we're gonna take this before we actually go lower. Like, is that I still feel, even though we've already had a decent move down, right? I still think we're gonna go to at least the wicks over here before we actually get a move lower. Because there's a lot of liquidity on these. And as you can see with funding rates are a lot lower than they should be. So we know that there's a lot of shorts. So if we do get a move down, I think it's going to be from that. But yeah, I miss the initial scalp short, but it is what it is.
In my opinion, if they do not smash the previous month high, we are not going anywhere higher
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
for the
If
next
buyers start
week
falling,
at least.
then we're gonna get a massive swing short, basically.
Yeah, I still think it is really interesting that if you look at the higher time frame, I'm gonna grab something to chart it. We still
Because if
have
you can see, previous week highs acted as support, right? We had a bounce. We lost the trend line today.
a previous week high.
Uh, the previous week high acted as
Yeah,
we had a bounce there. You know, it's acting as support right now.
yeah.
Uh,
I'm on a very low liquidity chart, so this probably touched.
I can't believe I went out of my long position from 98, 500 basically. That was the bottom, you know. That's my biggest flow, bro. I get fucking entries like this, and I'm unable to hold, you know, due to lack of conviction, not of
No,
myself.
it happens to everyone, bro. You know, it
What
happens to everyone.
what long did you get
The,
into, Sol?
I will show you the entry of the chat. Basically, it was that.
he was in a short from a bit lower as well.
Yeah, but the long was this one, the idea. And
Let me see.
yeah, I told the members to ape in, you know. So basically, the entry was there,
So,
and
question. So, when Bitcoin was at 98K, yeah, so I missed this move when it was at 98 and 100 plus. I bought it on spot, but I didn't get in a leverage trade until we broke above that 106 region. Um, so when you took this trade, yeah,
yeah,
through your mind, were you thinking there's a chance it could really go low? Because it pulled back a lot, right? 109 to 90 is a massive pullback, and psychologically, you think, fuck, they're not going to sell it now, are they? They're going to be buying it now, right? And then you get bullish market structure for confirmation. So, did you hold until final take profits, or saying you trimmed too early? What happened? Which went wrong there? Just out of
basically,
curiosity.
I've noticed that Bitcoin on the high time frames, if you go on the daily, for example, for this trade, you can see that we have the fair value gap, okay? And the entry is always above the wicks, like they use to front run the wicks, okay? And if you go on the weekly now, you can see when we bottomed at 74K in April. If you, yeah, you can see that they front run these weeks, you know. So for this trade, I went in at 77K, but you can see they front run this kind of. They do not look for the touch, and this theory works almost all the time.
That is
So
actually a
that's why
very
I'm
good
taking
point.
the risk. And after I took a second trade, like you can see that we formed this week, we filled the gap after the 98K bounce, and then I re-entered. Like I took a second trade at the week. You can see when we filled on the 4 hour.
On this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people got front run on this one. Yeah, I was. Yeah, this was my entry pretty much. So this was the confirmation, in my opinion, to get in the trade. But when I see, this is a rare occasion when you see like a very bullish momentum to the upside. When they leave this kind of gaps, you have to try and take the long at these levels, okay? For a true long, let's say, not just a bounce and in and out. So yeah,
Yeah, you see for me on that chart, yeah, if I was taking a trade there, I'd personally be waiting for a break above the previous lower high, which would have been at that point at what is that?
This one.
105? I mean,
Or
no,
this
no,
one.
lower. There, yeah, even the one lower there, right there. As soon as we got
Also
5 minute
this.
close above that, yeah, that move there. So I would have looked along when we had a breakout above the previous high. But if you caught 98, obviously, there's yeah. That's why I just say like you gotta know if the trade's like a swing or a scalp position, right? Because that's gonna change your take profits completely. And if you're catching the lows, you really want to be going in heavy with size and have wide take profits because then you just rather than having to day trade, you catch 20 30 R a month and you're chilling on your account. You don't need to trade every day, right? For me,
Yeah.
the volatility's really picked up after we broke out of that 5 day tight range, which you could have really only traded with like zero point 0.5 stops, 200x leverage on Bitcoin for a 1 to 2 R. But now volatility is picking back up. I've been getting a lot more active because it's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
No, what I wanted
even
to
now,
get to,
well,
Soul.
sorry, yeah, sorry, go on, Grass. I had a
Yeah,
I had a soul on one for free. I had a setup on my channel, but I got front run by $2, which was Tuesday evening when we bottomed out on Bitcoin. But yeah, please anyway, do continue.
yeah. What I wanted to get to, Soul, for and it's well, I'm saying Soul because we were talking about it, right? But for anyone that
Oh,
trades harmonics, yeah, Soul with a U as well, the person, not the ticker.
no, I said the same thing to Soul earlier. I was talking to him about Solana, and I was like, Soul, look at my Soul chart.
No, no. So what I wanted to get to is even if you don't have harmonics, or in my case always, right? I don't enter without them. You're almost always gonna have like at least one fib ratio that you bounce off of. So whenever I try and set my final targets, I always just use the ABCDs to get that. And the ratios don't have to be perfect with it, right? So in this case, I would either use this wick and just do it like this, or use it from that B point, anything like that. And that is how I would get my final targets. And
Okay.
there is no real obviously there are always going to be plays that you just wish you would have held for longer, but most of the time that's not the case. Like most of the time, we all know that most of the time things just reverse at some point, and you're sad that you didn't take more profits. So what I
Yeah.
try to do for my final target is I would get a a setup idea in a different direction that I wouldn't necessarily take, right? Like I wouldn't necessarily short this because this is not a good ABCD. Um, but the idea is still there. So that's usually what I take from my final targets.
Yeah. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So have you seen the anti-bat I have on the chat? Projects the price at 113,700, like just below the macro trend line. So something
Anti-bat.
tells me we're going there, bro. I'm not sure.
Wait, I actually never use anti-bats. What are the ratios on them? It's like AC is positive, I assume, but
I'll send you the. I have a cheat sheet, because sometimes the anti-harmonics a little bit hard
yeah.
uh, and they need more time, but the ratios are almost perfect on this one.
Yeah, because I do remember nearly all of them, but I never use anti-bats.
Yeah, honestly, at 70, when we bottomed at 75K, I had an anti-crab here, and it hit exactly. So these work. Some people say they don't work.
No, they
Actually, I
work for
believe they
sure.
work.
They work. They work.
So, I remember drawing my first harmonic for the very first time with Grassity.
Here it is. It's exactly. I have exactly the same for the anti.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Grassity, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm gonna go to the gym now, but I'm gonna be listening into the live stream still, but I won't be able to chat because I'll be driving and doing other things. But I'm also gonna drop the monthly recap today as well, guys. And yeah, I just put my Bitcoin chart in. I had a long open from 109.2 as a new long, but I'm really looking for a short higher up. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll listen in,
Gonna
guys.
rest
Yeah.
too, guys.
Yeah.
Gonna bounce.
All
Okay,
right.
no worries. I'll
I'll
see
talk to you
you
guys
soon,
later then.
Grassity.
Was
See
a
you
pleasure,
guys.
Graf.
All right, for sure.
Take care.
All right, see you
See you,
later,
brother.
guys. Yep.
Bye.
Okay. Well, let's get started with the event stream then. Um, First of all, I want to kind of showcase what Soul was talking about in the end, right? So I forgot the ratios for a second, but anti-bets are really simple. Anti-bets are essentially the same as a shark, but it's just a higher BTD. So I assume the thing he was talking about was like this. It's kind of Yankee. XP is a bit sketchy, but for anti-balance, XP is not that important. Anyway, what I wanted to look at today is this. When I started, the stream price was still down here, right? What I want to talk about is what is going to happen next. Because I see a lot of people everywhere be really, really bullish, and I think it makes sense. We talked about it last week that every single time we touch one of these wicks, we instantly get a candle close above and a strong move up, right? That is what last week's stream was about. We streamed on, I don't remember what day I streamed on, but we compared it to like the first and the second move. That's what we said. We're still seeing that movement. However, last time, what we also talked about is that all of the highs on the short side were being kept intact. So even though on the long side, every time we had a move down, we took out all of the longs before a move higher. On the short side, that hadn't happened yet. Not a single time. Because as you can see, whenever we place highs, it's going to place all lines on these wicks, right? What we can see is that all of them are still intact. So every single person that took shorts in any of these areas has their stop loss still intact. The only high that has now been taken is this one at the bottom. Let me mark it out, make it yellow. Is this one. This one has been taken, right? And we kind of, on this chart, we kind of touch this wick. If we go onto a perpetual chart, go onto a perp chart. If we go onto a perp chart, that hasn't happened yet, right? Spot charts touch it, perp charts didn't. For this charting, like for looking at this, right, looking at stop losses specifically, I always take perpetual charts over spot charts because we are literally looking at stop losses, right? And stop losses on spot are not going to be on the upside because no one is shorting on spot. That's not possible. On leverage, you can. So leverage charts matter a lot more when you're looking at stop losses. So anyway, let's consider this wick to not be taken yet. So currently, where we're at is we are very, very close to this area that has a lot of stop losses. This wick hasn't been taken yet. This wick hasn't been taken yet. And the highest one hasn't been taken yet either, right? But there's a pretty big gap in between. Now, the reason why I think this is really important is because we have so many stop losses in this area. Then anyone that trades like kind of supply and demand, right? You have a lot of candle closes and trades over here. This is a very easy supply zone. Or an order block, you have engulfing count, you have everything. This is a very likely area to start rejecting. Now, when I made the short post this morning, I said what I want specifically for us to enter a short trade is to take all of these out and then close below. Currently, what we've done is we have only taken the yellow one out. We've only taken out the lowest one. We closed below and we had a pretty good reaction. If we go into a 15-minute, you can see we wicked it, closed below, instantly had a bearish engulfing candle down and had a good move afterwards. However, the upper wicks are still intact. So what I'm looking for now, mainly, is I am looking at a slightly higher time frame. Before, I was looking at like a 1 hour to a 4 hour, right? Because that's what I wanted to execute on, considering we were getting that close during New York Open. However, considering that we are now very close to the daily, I'm looking at a daily candle for this. I'm either going to look for it today, which would be optimal, which would be the best, because that means it's just going to be on this daily candle. Or I'm looking for it over the next few days. In general, I still think we're going to see a wick up. We're going to close below it, or we're going to see a wick up. That's what I think. If we then close below it, I still think we have a really good short. If we close above it, I think shorts are off the table. BTC is really, really strong at the moment, but we don't know why, right? It could be multiple reasons. So that reaction to liquidity will tell us why. BTC could be really strong because it is going to actually move higher, right? Because there's a lot of buying pressure and we're going to go for new highs. However, it could also simply be to just take out a bunch of shorts before going lower. The structuring is still technically bearish, and there is a lot of liquidity here. It would make a lot of sense. So we just want to wait for that reaction and see what happens. Then when we actually see what happens, when the market actually makes a decision on what it wants to do, that's when we're going to take a position. So that's what I'm currently waiting for. Waiting for this to actually be wicked instead of just the lowest level. And then we're going to wait for the candle close, see what happens, and that's what we're going to decide on. Now, as for other coins, we were looking at Injective. Injective, very sadly, because of BTC, right? Injective worked out really well. I saw a few people got in it. I personally didn't get in because I was waiting for BTC, and as we can see, BTC didn't actually take the highs. In general, I think alts don't look all too good. What we saw when BTC started coming close to this level is that alts, in general, I don't look at a lot of alts anymore, right? But alts in general have started kind of slowing down. A lot of alts are getting close to their previous kind of resistances or their previous wicks, and when we got there, we started seeing a lot more bearish closes. For example, when we look at Aave, when BTC touched those levels we've talked about, right, started touching these wicks, what do we see across the board? Alts started consolidating. After this kind of consolidation, where BTC just had a very strong move up, and I'm on the same time frames, no, 4 hour. After this kind of consolidation, you just get a wick higher and a move down. This is not what you want to see if you want to see upside. So even though alts have looked really strong, I'm going to go by the same trigger as we have on BTC. There is a lot of reason to believe that if we do get a lot higher, or if we do get another push higher, that the place we actually close the candle is going to matter a lot for us going either higher or lower afterwards. So that's mainly what I'm still looking for. Now, as for actual harmonics, there is not a lot in this range. Harmonics wise, this range absolutely sucks, which is also why you've seen something very rare in my channel, where I don't even have a lot of harmonics on my charts at the moment, because quite simply put, all of these B points absolutely suck. We have one valid B point right over here on the 786. A to C on this one should be between a 0.382 and a 0.886. It is close. However, it is like technically out of tolerance. But when we look at where that ends up, this ends up way higher. This, in my opinion, is the only valid harmonic in this range. Because I'm a lot more strict with my harmonics than other people, right? For example, what Soul said, like, hey, yeah, there's an anti-bat here. He's not necessarily wrong, but it is too far out of tolerance for me to be happy trading it with. So, in my opinion, this is the only harmonic that we have here, a butterfly. So, currently, this range, I am just going off liquidity. I think liquidity is going to be very, very important in this area. Are there any questions so far? Because if not, then I want to take this time and go over some coin requests. So if you guys have any tickers that you want me to look at, you can put them in chat and we can look at some coins together. So for now, you're waiting on a daily close candle. If it closes above, you're looking for a retest. Yeah, I still don't necessarily think it is a good area to long if we close a candle above. However, if we do close a candle above, I'm going to go scan the charts and look for longs. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to either look for levels that need to be flipped, or for coins that are retesting opponent levels, or anything like that to take longs. I don't think BTC is a good long if we close above. because you're so close to all-time highs and that kind of stuff, that I think is really risky too long, even if you get that close. But in general, if we close above, I do think we're gonna go higher. Aave and AVAX for shorts and XRP and Tau. Sure. Let's see. I think it was this one, right? Okay, let's see. Let's start with Aave, because actually I like that coin. Oh, traditional TA, wow. Okay. So, first thing I always like to do, right, when I'm looking at a chart, and I would say kind of know Aave out of the top of my head. For those of you that were, when I started calling, Aave is one of my most traded coins. A few things I want to always look at when I start looking at a new coin, right? In general, what you want to be doing first is you want to mark out important high time frame levels. There are a few levels on Aave that instantly come to mind. However, I want to keep it as simple as possible this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just drawing some high time frame fits. And I want these to be a bit more clear than usual. So I'm going to slightly turn up the opacity. That's what I'm going to start with. Now, when you do that, you usually already get kind of an idea of where we are. So, as you may have noticed, Pupu said Aave and AVAX for shorts. When you look at a high time frame, where you just draw a simple fib, right? Where are we looking at the fibs? We can see that we're currently retesting the 0.382. This level is not one that I usually trade, right, on a lower time frame. But when you're on such a high time frame, these levels really matter. You can, for example, see that 0.13, a level I never trade, you can see that you have 2 bounces. Then third one closes above, right? And you get a retest, move higher. These levels, even though I never trade them, if you look at it on a very high time frame, that's when they start becoming really, really confluent. So, now that we know that, let's look at this. And we zoom in a little bit. What I always want to do is I want to start looking for M&W shapes. Now, we have, let's see, okay. We have a completed M shape right over here. Or I'm going to take this one. I'm going to take this one. Ooh, that's a really ugly candle. Okay. Okay, it's a really ugly one because this B and C are almost on the same candle. Which one should it be on? This one. But it is valid. So the reason why I want to mark this out is because even though this is a bullish pattern, we can still use the targets of this pattern as kind of resistance levels. So I'm just gonna mark this one out. And we have the blue lines as TPs of this harmonic. So where are we currently? Currently, just by drawing these 2 fibs, right, we can see that we are next to a very high time frame 0.382. And by the pattern that we just bounced off of, we're next to that second target at 0.618. So this is an area that absolutely makes sense for shorts. Now, we know that this can be a good area for shorts now. How are we going to execute? I see a very nice W shape here, right? There are a few ways to look at this. I can draw it like this one, and we're going to have a bat. Bats end at the 0.886, and they also have a pattern attached to them at the 0.786. So what I want to do is going to mark these 2 levels out. However, if we are a bit more lenient, let's see if this ends up something. No, it's going to end up in a 7 and 7. Okay. So on this time frame, we don't have anything supporting the current level. I'm going to go 1 lower. Try and see. We have a 786 over there. So this would be a 1272. So now we have some high time frame levels and we have some low time frame levels. So honestly, I agree. I think this would be a nice area to look for some shorts. This is where I would look for the short. So it's been a while, so I'll repeat it, right? One of the simplest harmonics you can trade is an ABCD. Essentially, what an ABCD is this. Let's say we have a move in this direction. So in this case, A to B. What if we just take that move? So I'm just going to take that, and we're going to do it again. So I'm going to put this over C. Now, what you get, that level, is usually a very, very good level. The example I like to use for this, if let's say you have a move into one direction, you have a little move up, right? You have a little retracement, and you just take that same move and you do it again. This is one of the simplest harmonic patterns you can trade. This is called an ABCD, and it is a very, very nice pattern to trade. So there are two parts to this pattern. First of all, the fib ratios. So you have this ratio between A and B that should correspond with the ratio between B and D. And second of all, your actual length of the move. It's a part technical or a traditional TA because the length of a move is very simple, just drawing a line, and a part fibs being that other level. So what we have over here is we have that fib, we have a 0.786, move like that, and we have the price I got. So if we do get to this level, which is also almost the same level as the higher time frame 618, I think that is going to be a really nice level to look for shorts. So I'm going to take that 618 as our entry level. I'm gonna, let me enable this real quick. Just gonna use that next fib of the same pattern as our stop loss. And this would be where I would look for a reversal. We have high time frame levels right here, and we have a lower time frame ABCD right there. This is how we would trade it. And because we have high time frame levels, this will be my TP1, this 382. And I don't like always putting my stops to entry the moment I take profits, right? But considering that this is such a high time frame level, I would also instantly move my stops to entry if we do hit this. Because if you do reverse from this, it is very likely that you go on here. So this is essentially how I would trade it. Let me mark this out real quick. Could I just mark that out as T1? And oh, just move these a bit to be able to take profit points. It's essentially how I would trade it. Okay, XRP. We had a few moves out of the last level. First would have gotten stopped out. Second one would have had a nice move. Let's see, XRP is still trading in this same unbelievably boring range. Okay, that's just how I would look at it, right? You were still trading in this range. There are two options for your range highs here. You can place it here, which I think makes more sense, or you can place it here, but then you have a lot of deviations. So I would place it right there. Okay. I'm gonna give you two XRP charts. This is gonna be the first one. Another way you could draw this is like this. Range. So that's how I'm gonna actually make it. Okay, that's how I would draw it for this XRP chart. The reason why I prefer it this way is because if you use fibs for this, you can kind of use that 1272 area for deviations, right? So every time you get kind of a retest and you start seeing candles like these come in, you can try and trade that as, in this case, a short, or in this case, as a long. Now, trading a range is very simple. This is where you want to buy. This is where you want to sell. And this mid-range is where you want to take partials. So I want to give you two charts. This is going to be the first one. And it's going to be a very boring chart. Because this, in my opinion, is just a range. Just try it like this. Very simple chart. You just see it ranging for a very long time. You draw lines at the lows and the highs. That is where you want to trade it. If you don't like trading this on leverage, makes sense. You just do it on spot. You just buy every time you get close to this line, right? For spot, I would front run it a little bit. And you take partials in the middle and you fully sell at the top. Now, that is not all we can do though. So let's zoom in a bit. The only kind of harmonics we're forming at the moment. Yeah, no, that's too high. 0.43 is outside of tolerance for everything. It's the highest point. Okay, so the only things we're kind of forming at the moment are going to start up until this point, which, considering the range, isn't something I would necessarily trade. Yeah, so we have a shark starting from this point. And same pattern up here at the 113 to an informal pattern at the 1272. Okay, so this is essentially what we're working with. I personally would not trade the shark, the first one. The reason being that you're in such an awkward spot. We're like right above mid-range. This is not a place where you want to short, right? I would much rather look for longs in this area. Now, this one though, this is really interesting. Because now you have a pattern very close to range highs. This is one I would absolutely trade. And when we zoom out a little and then able to fibs again, we can see that this 1-for-1 fib aligns very well with the wick over in this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that stop loss right above that wick over there and just drag this down to range lows. So that way we can try kind of trade the range and the harmonic at the same time. Because when you look at it like this, you have a harmonic like that. And when you look at it from a range perspective, we're also at range highs. So I think this is a much nicer area to take a trade. That is what I would do. And outside of that, it's kind of hard to judge. You're not really forming a lot of patterns over in this area. Because when we look at it like this, we're kind of forming a guardian. We're very close to tolerance, so I'll go with it. Yeah, the closest pattern you have is kind of in this area. Where we take an X to be 0.618, right? Slightly outside of tolerance, but have to be a bit more lenient with this chart. And we take that to BC 1.618 right there. So kind of fun to see how these patterns always align near the top and bottom of the ranges, right? Okay, I'm gonna place stops right below the wick over there and take the exact same idea. I'm gonna drag this to the left a bit. Okay. Funnily enough, I wanted to give you a more complicated chart, but we got almost the exact same chart as the first one. That's how I would trade it. And if you actually like XRP for spot, I think this level is also just a really good area to get into some spot. Very nice high time frame support, right? Very easy invalidation if you actually go and flip it back to the resistance. So it's a nice area. All right, let's see Tau. Oh wait, Tau was the one that we had to go into Spec C for. Did we touch it? The entry? Ooh. No, okay, that was already there. Okay, I'm gonna be very annoying with Tau. We already have it marked out from last time. So the thing with Tau is very close to a lot of high time frame levels, right? When you look at this pattern, more high time frame Gardening, we're very close to the levels it created. We've already had one bounce of that B point, so this one is a bit more risky. I would only take the first trade if you actually get a sweep. That is also what this arrow is for, because you've already had your first reaction, right? When you've already had a reaction, your play becomes a lot more risky. Now, the other levels, I think, are a lot better. I think both of these are fine. Both of these are essentially on the same pattern. The left one is a bit more risky, but a lot better reward, because your stop loss is so much smaller, your risk reward is going to be a lot bigger. The one on the right is a lot safer, so you're going to have a higher win rate, but you're going to make less profit. So this depends on what kind of trades you like to take. I think both of these are absolutely fine. And last one, let's do AVAX. I do kind of like AVAX because I've stopped trading a lot of coins, right? So this is literally my altcoin watch list at the moment. These are all the coins I look at. AVAX is always up there. AVAX is a really, really nice coin to trade because you have a lot of levels. And we're very close to a lot of levels. So the first thing I always want to do with AVAX is I want to take a little fib from the lowest point over here to the highest point over here. The reason why is because there's a lot of harmonics on these fibs. But even if you don't trade harmonics, these fibs react really well, right? You get a really nice bounce from this one, resistance, etc. So these levels are the first levels I want to look at. Now, when you look at the candles that were formed today, this doesn't look good at all. So I'll keep it on, let's keep it on 12 hour, right? When you look at what was formed today, this doesn't look good. You're kind of very slowly consolidating upwards. You had a rather bearish close where you get a wick into the previous highs, which you close way below. So this doesn't look good. So very low time frame, I think this could go down. However, when you look at a higher time frame, what do we see? Let's, for a second, remove all of the clutter, except for this little line right here. I'll answer that question in a bit. Very silly question. Your silly question has a very silly answer. So let's remove all of the clutter, except for this one line, right? It's all the same fib that I drew a bit ago, only place a line on it. Now, when we look at this, what do we see? Because what I see over in this area is this. I see a first low being formed, followed by another lower high, right? There's a bunch of lower highs over there. Followed by another lower low. However, that lower low actually closed above the previous wick. Close above had a really good move up. There's a really good reaction. You instantly get an engulfing candle up, bullish engulfing candle, and follow through. This is a very good thing to see. This is what you like to see if you're looking for longs. Now, what do we do after that? We first kind of form a lower high, right? Now, this is to be expected. However, after that, we break the lower high and we make a new higher high. This is very, very good. This is almost as textbook as a break of structure as you can get. You get your lower low, lower high, lower low, higher high, higher low. it would make a lot of sense for AVAX to just go up from this point. Now, as I said, I think the lower time frames have room for down movement. I think you can easily get, let's say, to this point, right? I think that's very realistic. It would make a lot of sense. The idea would still be intact. But as long as we don't close a daily candle below this wick, I think AVAX looks absolutely perfect for a reversal. This is absolutely the structuring you want to see before a move up. So when I look at AVAX from like the perspective of someone that, for example, wants to trade spot, I think this is a good spot, good place to start getting some spot. I think it makes a lot of sense. You have a good starting point. I would not fully allocate instantly, but you have a good starting point right over here. It's perfectly fine. Starting light over in this area, perfectly fine. You have good invalidation. However, it is 20% away. So this is the reason why I said I would start light. So let's say 20% of your position, something along those lines. And you just DCA down a bit until you get your average, let's say, somewhere in this area. 10%, 15% stop loss. Perfectly fine to manage on spot, right? That is very well risk managed if you can get into that average. So I would absolutely, for AVAX, just start kind of buying this area, right? We already have a spot position active. If I hadn't, I would take this position and I would just start DCAing in this area. I would personally enter 20% at CMP. I would take, let's see. I do want 2 DCAs because I don't think this is the place where we're going to use 40% for a DCA and a 40% on the flip of a level. Because we've already kind of had that. We had a breakup structure. So I don't want to do that. Yeah. I would use 40% right over here. And you could front run these slightly, right? These are the levels that it should bounce on, but it could front run. So if you're scared of missing out, I would place them just slightly higher. And then the last one I would just place over here. You can change the numbers up a little bit. Maybe you want 1 DCA and you just change it up a bit. Maybe in your risk management plan, a 20% loss is perfectly fine. Personally, I don't like going that high, but could make sense. This is what I would go with. And your stop loss is going to be a daily close below. If I wasn't in a position, I would take something along these lines. I am already in a position, so I am not taking this. Now, as for take profits, I know these are going to sound optimistic. However, the technical targets, because there is a harmonic here, this harmonic right there. The technical targets are these four. Or, well, the 786 isn't really. These would be the 3 technical targets. So, essentially, this is how I would trade my spot position. Exactly like this. Okay, to get to your question, I think I can... yeah, I can showcase it on this chart. So, very simple reason why I have a 24-hour and a daily time frame is this. First of all, they are almost exactly the same. I'm going to showcase you the difference in a bit because it matters on index charts. They're almost exactly the same. That is why I have both of them. Because when they're almost exactly the same, what I can do is I can decide I want to see this harmonic and I don't want to see this harmonic. That is why I have it. I cannot see my harmonics on the day. And if you can look down here, where you have the little... Hey, I don't have it enabled on this preset. Okay. If you look down here, this time for real, you can see that harmonics can clutter up charts a lot if you zoom out a bit. So let's say I want to look at the daily candle, but I have a bunch of harmonics in that area and I can't see it. I just do that and I can still see it. So that's the first reason why I have it. The second reason is the reason that applies to everyone, is this. And not everyone knows this probably. It's probably new for a lot of people. Yeah, but have you, because you trade harmonics sometimes too, right? So you just look at this like, wait, I can do that. Yeah, exactly. How you do it is when you go into the settings of your harmonic, you go to visibility, and this works for any tool, by the way. If you want to do this on any tool, it works for everything. And you just disable the days, or put it to whatever you want to do it, right? That's how you do it. Because I disable days because, well, the 24-hour is an hourly time frame. Could I have templates for each time frame? I have enough templates. The problem is that for some reason, not all of them have this enabled, apparently. Aha. Okay. Save as, and you just select the same thing, by the way. If you don't want to make a new template, but you want to like kind of save it, just change one thing, you just save it over your old one. So I changed one thing, and I would just save it over this one. That works. No trading view tips. Yeah. Okay. What was it again? It's a gardening. Oh, misclick. Gardening. Okay. Now, let's go to the next point. Yeah, this will be too long. I mean, you're gonna get this. You don't want that. Because this is chaotic. Like, there's no way around this for me. I mean, I can delete all of these. But apart from that, there's no way around it, right? Everything with exclamation mark D before it, there's no way around it. Because otherwise I have to do it manually every single time, and I don't want to do that. But don't clutter it up too much. This is like an exception for me. Okay, the last point, and this is actually important for everyone that actively trades. Let's take a look at this. So I'm gonna place a line, and I use the magnet tool, right, on the left. I always hold control, so that activates the magnet tool. I'm gonna snap a line to the top of this, to Alt-M, or like the old Alt-M. Very simple, right? That should always be in the same spot. Now, I'm going to do the same on the weekly. Weekly is the same thing. Then I'm going to do the same on the daily. Daily is the same thing. And I'm going to do the same on the 24-hour. And what do we see? It is different. Index charts don't use the same data on the daily as the hourly. The hourly uses it from every hour. The daily doesn't. The daily excludes it sometimes. Everything above the hourly is inaccurate, technically. On index charts, right? So on total 1, 2, 3, on others dominance, BTC dominance, on USDT dominance, all of those. So not on, let's say, BTC USDT, that's completely accurate. But on all of the index charts, it's inaccurate. So when I want to check that, which happens a lot because I trade harmonics, right? The ratios actually matter. This matters. This really matters. The hourly is the most accurate. As you can see on this, these candles look very normal, right? This is normal candle structure. If I go on to the daily, disgusting. This is not what the daily candles look like. So that is the second reason. And I either mark both of them out or I just keep the one on the hourly. And it can really matter, right? Like, for example, let's just look at the latest candle. Just look at this. It saves you quite a bit of an entry. And just to showcase it, I think BTC Dominance has it as well. Let's take a random wick. I have it. I've never done some BTC Dominance, right? So it's a bit of a guess. It's very slightly. It's very slight difference. So that means there is a difference. Yeah, you can see it on this one. This one's a bit more clear. All of these charts have separate levels. So whenever you want to use wicks as an actual level, know that these are different depending on the time frame. Which I've only noticed because I use it, right? But that is one of the reasons why I still use it. So on these charts, if I look at an all-time hour or anything like that, I go to an hourly time frame. Should do Sui, sure. Sui's the last one. Let's see. Are we still respecting this one? That would be nice. Oh yeah, and last kind of reason, you see how I drew this on the weekly? And I always snap it to the wicks, right? Literally always do it. It's on the wicks. It is no longer on the wicks. And this doesn't always actually put it on the same spot because the days of the week can be different, right? If both of them are Tuesday, it's going to be on the same day. But if one of them is, let's say, Tuesday and the other is Sunday, then it's going to be entirely different. So that's kind of the last reason. Time frame alignment stuff for diagonals, for diagonal tools. But not a lot of people use those, so it's a smaller reason. Even on normal crypto. Yeah, this isn't everything. That is just a thing TradingView and other charting tools do. So if you want to be as accurate as possible and you actually want to magnet things to the wicks, you have to be on an hourly time frame. But let's say, honestly, this almost only matters for people that trade GAN systems or people that use Fib fans. Because let's say you're drawing a trend line, the difference between drawing it, okay, let's see, it doesn't have 3 touches, but it is what it is. I do want to use good examples, but I can't see one on Sui. Does this one have 3 touches? Yeah. I mean, the difference between drawing it like this or doing it on a higher time frame, it doesn't matter too much. For trend lines, it doesn't matter too much. It only matters if you can actually magnet things to the candles itself. Like doing this like this. If you zoom into a 24-hour, it's still the same thing. Okay, let's actually look at Sui. So the reason why I wanted to start with this fan is because this fan on Sui, for some reason, Sui religiously respects fans. This is actually, fans on Sui are really, really nice and easy to trade. So as you can see, in fans are a bit different than normal fibs. The 0.707 is the most important level on a fan, in my opinion, because the 707 and the 1.414, a bit more nerdy stuff, right? But the 707 and 1.404 have a lot more to do with time-based analysis. So when you factor in time, which you do with diagonals and trend lines as well, 707 matter a lot more. So essentially, when I look at it like this, every single time we touch that 707, we go up to the next level at least. So what are we currently doing? We touch that 707 and we are now rejecting off of this level. Now this is not a strong rejection at all. We had a candle close to it, had a rejection candle. Not a strong reaction at all. We didn't close like as a bearish engulfing candle, for example. This didn't close as a shooting star, it's closed as a doji, which is an indecisive candle. Indecisiveness in a move up is still technically bearish, but it could have been so much worse. This is a decent reaction. So honestly, what I would look for is I would look for this long. I think if we actually flip this to support, you have a really, really nice long up until the next level. Now, because I know no one is going to draw diagonals on their chart, I would just take the top of this wick and use that. That is going to do perfectly fine, right? That is going to be the same level in a few hours, like literally tomorrow or the day after. So this is the first thing that comes to mind, because this reaction isn't that bearish at all. This is a rather strong level, but we're not reacting heavily. Now, the second thing I would look at is, do we have any actual bearish harmonics that we can use as a target and as a way to short later? When I draw the most obvious XAB, right, which is highest point, lowest point, and then the point in the middle, this isn't valid. 0.314, way too far off. So let's draw the next one. Next one would only lead to informal patterns. And what that usually tells you is that this chart isn't ready yet. This is something that I call uncompletion bias. It is essentially saying, hey, there is nothing on this chart, even though there should be. So it is very likely that we actually haven't completed the pattern that we're going to form yet. So what would that be? We can take our x to a, and essentially I'm going to spare the details, but essentially we're looking for a 0.5 right over here, or 0.618, or 786. So I'm just going to place a little fib and mark out the levels that we want to be wary of. So I want to care for these levels. These are the levels where I think you could reject. I would personally not necessarily look to take positions unless I have other confidence, but these would be my TPs for the one. Now, the one level that instantly kind of stands out is this one, 0.618. Not only because it's the 618, because it's a golden pocket, but also because it's right next to this top. It is right on top of these wicks. So this is the only level where I would consider looking for shorts. Where would I take it? I'm going to place my final target right there. I would take profits on almost the same levels. A bit more of a risky short because we don't actually have a harmonic to support it, but we have a fib, we have a bunch of liquidity targets on the warning block. There is good reason to believe that this is going to work out. So I'm going to keep it on the chart. This is what I would go at with Suri. Do note though, on a higher time frame, this analysis would be entirely different, right? Let me just, because in a very high time frame where we look at Suri, and any harmonic trader is going to tell you this, this chart looks really good on a high time frame. I forgot to take this for it. It could still go slightly lower, right? It could go over in this area, but I don't think it does. It still could though. On a high time frame, this chart just looks really good. Very high time frame harmonic, and we're flipping the levels of support that we need to. You reached TP2, came back near entry, now you're getting a bounce again. I think this chart looks good. Okay. Anyway, that is gonna be the end of the stream today. I wanna thank everyone for coming. I wanna appreciate everyone coming in and putting things in chat. Would you sure BT? Yeah, I have a short signal active. It's over my channel, and I'm gonna upload the recording instantly so you can hear my thoughts on it. We went over it at the start of the stream. Long story short, we're gonna wait for these green lines to be wicked close below, and that's when we're gonna short. Yeah, that's nice to hear. Did you watch the Harmonics crash course I put out a while ago? Because I think that is a great place to start. Not yet, but on the list. I'm gonna give that a try. That's gonna make it a lot easier to get started with harmonics. All right, I'm gonna end the recording here. Thanks everyone for coming, and I will see everyone next week.